Debates over political reform olive branch. Growing concerns about flu vaccine amid outbreak. And Mitt Romney says no to 2016 White House bid.
Good evening. Civic Party lawmaker Ronnie Tong has floated the idea of scrapping functional constituencies in LegCo in 2020 in exchange for pan-Democrat support for the government's upcoming political reform package. Some say the proposal is worth considering, while others are more skeptical. Liz Yun has our top story.
Civic Party legislator Ronnie Tong proposed earlier that if the Hong Kong and central governments agree to scrap all functional constituencies in the 2020 Legislative Council election, he would lobby pan-democratic lawmakers to support the reform proposal for the 2017 chief executive election. The proposal for 2017 needs the support of 2/3 of lawmakers. So, even if all 43 pro-establishment legislators vote in favor, 4 more votes are still needed. Two pan-Democrats, Joseph Lee and Charles Mok, said Tong's proposal is worth considering.
If that is put into the deal in a very clearly worded way, maybe not just, it would definitely not be just a promise from the Hong Kong government. It must be coming from the NPCSC. If that happens, then I think I must give it full consideration.
But Occupy Central organizer Chen Kim-man believes it's almost impossible for pan-Democrats to accept such a proposal.
Why should Hong Kong people accept something which is fake and then give excuse to the government not to give Hong Kong people a genuine choice?
The LegCo president has his own doubts.
Is it necessary that when we elect all the seats by universal suffrage, the functional constituency seats must all be abolished?
Zhang said some lawmakers are against abolishing the functional constituency seats. So, if the government agrees to Tong's proposal, it risks losing support for its 2017 reform plan. A local National People's Congress deputy waded in, telling the pan-Democrats to be realistic.
It is unrealistic to ask the central government to make accurate or concrete promise for the future development.
Liz Yun, TVB News.
Next, controversy over another article in a student publication on Hong Kong independence. Education Chief Eddie Ng says society should look at the issue in an objective way. Here's Evelina Leung.
The Hong Kong University Students' Union publication Undergrad has released another controversial article. It points out that Beijing has already ruled out universal suffrage for Hong Kong and that one country, two systems is dying. The people of Hong Kong are facing destruction, so they have to fight the war and begin a revolution or become slaves. The publication insists it's engaged in a debate on whether Hong Kong should be independent, not advocating it. Commenting on the article today, the Secretary for Education said freedom of expression is one of the territory's core values. But Eddie Ng also referred to Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying's recent criticism of an earlier article in Undergrad on Hong Kong independence. Leung said in his policy address that the piece put forward fallacies and that the SAR must stay alert. The education chief said the CE was simply sincerely telling people to remain alert amid all these suggestions. Ng added people should look at this from an objective point of view. Evelyn Lang, TVB News.
Now to the flu outbreak. The government says the H3N2 vaccine won't be available for a few more months. It says it will continue to keep in contact with the pharmaceutical companies. Ronnie Samtani has more.
The deadly influenza outbreak has already claimed more than 80 lives this year. Secretary for Food and Health Ko Wing-man said the number of flu cases has soared in the past 10 days. And because the existing vaccine has failed to help protect against the mutated variant of the H3N2 virus, known as the Switzerland strain, the government is trying to get hold of the correct jab.
This is only the first month of the traditional seasonal flu. If we already have so many serious cases, then I think it is reasonable only to expect that there will be more to come. We try to explore the possibility of introducing a vaccine which is targeting the circulating strain of H3N2 influenza, but I was given to understand that this is only going to be available in a sufficient number, at least in March or April.
Since the start of the year, Prince of Wales Hospital has received nearly 300 H3N2 flu patients, exceeding the average number of cases during the seasonal flu period. Many of them involved elderly patients, and 15 of them have been treated at the intensive care unit. Professor David Hui from the Chinese University's School of Medicine said if people suffer from a fever or cough, within 48 hours of catching the flu, they should be prescribed the drug Tamiflu. And he said it is best to treat patients within 5 days of flu symptoms appearing. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
U.S. President Barack Obama and the Dalai Lama will attend an event in Washington next week. The White House says there are no plans for them to have a meeting. The Tibetan spiritual leader and the U.S. president will be at the National Prayer Breakfast on Thursday. Their last meeting in February 2014 was criticized by Beijing, which warned that it would damage Sino-American ties. Now, commenting on next week's gathering, a spokesman for the Chinese embassy in Washington said Tibet-related issues are China's domestic affairs. The spokesman said Beijing is against any leaders of any countries meeting the Dalai Lama in any form.
Thousands of Shiites gathered across Pakistan today to protest against the bombing of a Shiite mosque yesterday that killed at least 59 people. At the site of the blast, mourners held a mass funeral for those who died. Other protesters burned tires and chanted slogans demanding the arrest of those responsible and better protection for Shiite places of worship. The bombing occurred when hundreds of worshipers were packed in the mosque for prayers. Investigators blame a suicide bomber. The Sunni militant group Judallah, a splinter group of Pakistan's Taliban, has claimed responsibility. Will he or won't he? He now says he won't. We're talking about Mitt Romney, the defeated 2012 U.S. presidential candidate who ruled out running for the White House in 2016. NBC News has more.
While he was convinced the third time could have been the charm, Mitt Romney, seen here today in New York City, told supporters he believes this is the right move.
You can't imagine how hard it is for enemy to step aside. I've decided it's best to give other leaders in the party the opportunity to become our next nominee.
The 2012 Republican nominee sounded a lot like a candidate just this week, attacking the Democrats' 2016 favorite.
Secretary of State Hillary Clinton cluelessly pressed a reset button for Russia.
But in recent days, Romney saw many past donors and supporters sign on with other campaigns, including his top advisor in Iowa, now with Jeb Bush.
I'm relieved. I admire him, but I don't think he should have run, and I don't think he would have done very well if he had.
The carousel of candidates is huge. Already more than a dozen Republicans have announced fundraising groups or political action committees, among them Chris Christie. Today, Romney appeared to take a parting shot at Bush, who he met with in Utah last week, by tipping his cap to the next generation of Republican leaders.
One who's just getting started may well emerge as being better able to defeat the Democrat nominee.
Leading Republicans quickly praised Romney's decision. Bush on Facebook calling him a patriot. Former running mate Paul Ryan tweeting Mitt Romney would have made a great president. Compliments from Rand Paul and Marco Rubio, too. Exactly 3 weeks after he first flirted with another run, Romney's departure is shaking up an already wide-open Republican field. Peter Alexander, NBC News.
Greece and its European creditors were in dispute as they opened talks on the country's bailout package yesterday. Athens is seeking some relief from its €240 billion lifeline. Alan Booknia reports.
Greece's finance minister met with the Eurozone's finance chief in Athens yesterday. The 5-day-old radical left government insists on keeping its pre-election promises to seek a substantial cut on the rescue loans and scrap painful budget measures that were demanded in exchange for the loans.
Η κυβέρνησή μας θα πορευτεί με γνώμονα.
Greece's finance minister said they were causing self-fed deflation and non-viable debt. The creditors were having none of it and warned Greece of the consequences.
It is of the utmost importance that Greece remains on a path of recovery. This requires commitment to the reform process and to fiscal sustainability. Taking unilateral steps or ignoring previous arrangements is not the way forward. Problems in the Greek economy have not disappeared or changed overnight with the elections. There are still major challenges ahead in order to realize sustainable growth.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel met with French President François Hollande in Strasbourg to try to find a common position on Greece. French officials have said that Greece could be given more time to pay off its debt, but dismissed the notion of a write-off or a deviation from its promised reforms. German officials have been much more hard-line. The country's finance ministry said it would not give in to what it called blackmail and described a debt cut as divorced from reality. Shares on the Athens Stock Exchange plunged 13% this week as investors worry that Greece will go into default unless a deal with the creditors is reached soon. The country's next debt obligations are due in March. Alan Brookney at TVB News.
And still ahead in our newscast, more deadly fighting in eastern Ukraine. A worsening measles outbreak in the United States. And a bad day in the office for the Tiger.
Winning is everything for this glorified national treasure.
Who do you think you are, Panda? Who do you think I am, Peacock?
So step aside and let the endangered heroes save the day.
What are you gonna do now?
We surrender! Honestly, I didn't think I'd make it this far.
Kung Fu Panda 2, Sunday on Pearl's Movie of the Month.
Prepare yourself for a hot... What?
瞓唔着，有英國巴哈甜水靈，噴兩下入口可以鬆弛神經，用天然白綠花精華製造，呢啲叫花療真正，個人 relax 咪瞓得冧啲咯。巴哈甜水靈。
Can you beat them?
Yes. Il y aura 3 membres au comité.
In French, cultures will clash.
Objection. I don't speak French. There's no objection here, Mr. Goddard. This is not law and order.
But there's one thing.
You have time for a bite?
Sure.
That never gets lost in translation.
Don't worry, just the way.
Thursday, The Good Wife at 10:35 on Pearl. The time now is 7:43. The time check was brought to you by Seiko.
Welcome back. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will travel to Ukraine next week to show support for Ukrainian troops battling pro-Russian rebels. Full-blown fighting erupted again earlier this month, following a period of relative tranquility during a poorly respected ceasefire. Artillery shells killed at least 15 people in the rebel stronghold of Donetsk yesterday. The separatists are inching towards a crucial rail line that connects Donetsk with Luhansk, another city held by the rebels. A U.S. State Department spokesman said Kerry will meet with senior Ukrainian officials next Thursday. He's also expected to meet with the Russian foreign minister after that when they attend a security conference in Munich. The South African government has granted parole to the head of a covert unit responsible for dozens of deaths during the country's apartheid era. 66-year-old Eugene de Kock was sentenced in 1996 to 2 life terms for